Hey. Welcome to Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Freeman. I'm a TEDx speaker. I'm an author of a book, which is somewhere back there. And I'm focused on helping our young people see that they have the capacity to navigate through the challenges that will come their way. And speaking of being able to speak to young people, I have this event coming up in a few weeks, and or next week, next Wednesday, and so I get to talk to youth from 9 to 99 about loneliness, self-bullying, and proactive suicide prevention in my lighthearted way. I'm so excited. If you're in the Sioux Falls area, feel free to come. The event is free, and I would love to see you. And but that's not the main event of the podcast today at all. Today I have a guest who's exemplifies what it has meant as a person to grow through his career, not only in his accomplishments, but in his ability to empathize with other people and bring out the best in people. I'm excited to tell you a little about him, but before that, before that, I guess that random slide. Don't, that's for later. But before that, take two.
Today's guest, John Dickerson.
Well, welcome back to Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. Let me tell you a bit about John. John Dickerson strongly believes in helping people discover ways to meet the challenges before them and thrive. He began his career with the Arc of South Dakota. South Dakota, dear to my heart, because it's my home state and where I live now. He began his career in 1973. The Arc is an organization that assists people who have intellectual and developmental disabilities as part of their life experience. On his first day at the Arc, John remembers attending a meeting to draft the first statewide rules for special education. Talk about being thrown right into to something important. And he continued to do important things. He spent 42 years with the ARC, over 32 of those as executive director of the ARC of Indiana. After a brief adventure in politics, John launched Quillo Platforms in 2018. Quillo provides an empowering platform for sharing stories, resources, and knowledge for people with disabilities, support staff, and their families. Quillo started a few years ago, but check this out. It's now a force for good, enhancing lives in one state? No. In 5 states? No. In 10 states? No. In 15 states. So without further ado, welcome John Dickerson. John Dickerson's in the house.
Hey, Jason, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Where are you hailing from today?
I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana, which is home right now.
Nice. Have you ever been to the Indianapolis 500?
Well, great question. Yes, I have. It was just Indy 500 weekend, and this was the first one back in full force since the pandemic. And
Mm,
so it's
mm.
an exciting all-day event. And there's people that have been to the race consistently for 40 plus years. I go every now and then, not a regular goer, but it's a great experience to be there.
Last question on this, because this isn't at all what we're talking about, but how hard is it to get tickets?
Oh, you can always get tickets, the great tickets, the ones that are in the prime viewing area, are literally handed down from generation to generation. They
Mm,
rarely go on the public
mm.
market. But one of the things I'll say also about the Indy 500, it's incredibly accessible to people with disabilities and families. And so
That's awesome.
it's a great opportunity and a great venue for folks to be in and be part of there, of all people being part of it.
That's so wonderful. So John, we're going to talk a lot about different stories this hour. So so I just had the thought, what better way to get into the subject of the power of stories than to talk about Quillo a little bit and what these stories mean to the subscribers of Quillo.
Well, thanks, Jason. And one of the things I've learned through this long career, and it kind of humbles me that next year I'll be celebrating 50 years working in the disability field.
Oh my
And
gosh!
yeah,
Happy pre-50
yeah,
years. That's awesome. Thank
it
you for all you've done. Oh my gosh.
makes you feel a little old. But one of the things that I found over my career is the power of stories, and people can relate to stories. We certainly need data, we need facts, we need information. But whether you're a family member or a person with a disability or a professional, a story can transport you. It can show you something. It can paint a picture. And when we started Quillo, we started with the idea that short 60-second stories that were based on positive psychology, positive stories, could impact people, both folks in seeing their own future as people with disabilities,
Hmm,
family members beginning to have higher expectations for their son or
hmm,
daughter, brother, sister, and for professionals working in the field at all levels to begin to learn and think about what's possible. And so we
hmm.
built Quillo as a platform to push these positive stories out to folks on a variety of topics. We now have over 1,500 videos in our library, and it's growing every month. We're very
1,500?
Yeah, we're very humbled that you've done a number for us, and they're very well received. And your stories touch people and beginning to think about what's possible, as opposed to all the things that people are told that they can't do. And so Quillo is all about promoting equity, promoting opportunity, and promoting this goal that everybody has a gift. And you say it so well, that everybody has a gift. And how do we help people find their gift and their passion for life so that they too experience the happiness of having a good life?
Hmm. So we often think of, like, someone says, let me tell you a story, and we look at our watch and we're like, do I have an hour? Will they tell me a long story? So you coach your contributors to get the stories across in a minute. Whatever gave you the sense that people could get across profound bits of information in such a short time?
Well, people that know me well often are laughing when they hear about the Quillo concept that it's only a minute, because they would tell you, I can't say my name in a minute. That it is, we chose the format. First of all, we chose video rather than print or just audio for our stories, because video connects with the right brain, the creative side of our lives, the emotional side of our life. Left brain is our very analytical, memory side of what we do, but the right brain is where we feel things. And when we talk about helping people shape their future, it's about their confidence, their belief, their feeling about hope for the future. And so that's why we chose video. And then we spent a couple years studying. And, you're such a master of this with your stories of getting to a point quickly. And we set an arbitrary limit of 60 seconds because the research shows from YouTube, which people love watching YouTube videos and now TikTok, that the shorter the video, the more attention it gets. And that people start dropping off after about 45, 60 seconds. So our videos are short. People that we're aiming at are people with disabilities, families, and professionals. They're all busy. They're all moving very fast. And so you get to the heart of something in a short amount of time. The other thing the research taught us is that to change people's confidence, beliefs, expectations, it's not saying things to them once. It's saying to them over and over by different people and sharing their stories. And so it's not trying to get everything into a minute, but maybe somebody hears your story about now being a TED Talk speaker and having a business helping change lives. And they think, boy, I never thought about doing that. I'd love to do that. Or writing a book or something else that another person's story inspires them. The research shows you have to hear things between 700 and 700 times before it absorbs in you. And we just don't know how many times that is. So a lot of short messages that are repetitive will help build some confidence in people to try things.
As you say that, I think of the story of Robert Bannister. He was the first person, I think I'm saying his name right, who ran the sub 4-minute mile. But after people heard his story, I think in the next few years that a lot of people ran a sub 4-minute mile because they had seen it done. They heard the story of Robert Bannister and knew it was possible. So that inspired their story.
Absolutely. Seeing somebody achieve something is profoundly impactful. And then you see another person achieve it. You think, well, maybe I can do that. If you don't think it's possible, if you're always told that I can't do something. When I started in the field in 1973, it was shared that children with Down syndrome would never learn to read. Well, if you don't think they're going to ever learn to read, you never try to teach them to read. Now, today, we know that's absolutely false. And could introduce you to folks. One of my authors on Quillo is a young woman with Down syndrome that is becoming a preschool teacher's aide in Kansas City and going to college and studying early childhood education. And she reads to children. She has her own blog. She has her own following with what she's doing in this. So it is sharing stories that help people of all ages think about what's possible. And the poet Patty Dye has a great phrase that I love to quote. And she said, the shortest distance between two people is a story.
The shortest distance between two people is a story. That's so good. So
Yeah,
good.
I mean, that's why she's a great poet, and it brings it down to the essence of what is the point that we can help lift people up. The other thing we do at Quillo is it's all based on positive psychology, the work of Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania. And we can't control all the messaging out in the world that is there. I mean, there's a lot of negative messaging in the world. There's a lot of negative politics. There's a lot of negative news in the world.
Mm.
But what he focuses on is that, yes, there's all that's out there that you can't control, but what you can control is how you think about the world and how you think
Mm.
about the messages you share with others. And it
Mm.
starts with being grateful and expressing gratitude, expressing appreciation to others, and putting out that positive message of what is it we can do for one another to
Mm.
help get through these challenging times. And so with each of our Quillo messages, it's all based on this essence of positive psychology and taking care of yourself, as well as thinking about the positive things about your life and where you want to go and shaping tomorrow.
Mm. Mm. Speaking of stories, Tina Thriving Miller, she's a laughter yoga leader who inspires lots and lots of people. She says, "Yep, one of these days I'm going to write my book."
Well,
And
Tina, I hope you do. I mean, I'm so impressed, and you were kind enough to share a copy of your book with me. And um, it's a terrific book. And, this idea of there's lots of people that have started a book, but finishing one is a huge achievement. And so, Tina, I hope you will take that opportunity and do that, because if you're driven to sharing your information is part of it's our tagline with Quillo of share today and shape tomorrow. That by
share today and
sharing,
shape tomorrow.
by sharing information, you're going to help somebody else shape their future. And it's a gift.
I hadn't expected to go here at this moment, but you mentioned gratitude. So what is appreciative inquiry?
Well, so thanks so much for asking that, because I just discovered this a few years ago, and it's been around for 20 years. And a writer named Coop Writer came up with this. And the idea that for generations, leaders have been taught that we're here to solve problems, right? We're supposed to identify the problems, study what are our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities, threats, and solve the problem. And we're rewarded for solving problems. And what he wrote about is if we spend all of our days solving problems, we tend to look at the world as a problem waiting to be solved.
Mm.
And what he said is, in the theory of appreciative inquiry, is that you should spend an equal amount of time working on understanding why things are successful. Why is it other parts of your organization are working well? And an example, if you're working with employees and you're working with those 10 or 15% that are really challenging employees, and you're putting 80% of your time into working with them, you're overlooking your great employees that are doing a great job. And so while you still have to solve problems, you should start looking at why are things working. You should be talking to the people that are being successful, not only to reward them with attention and to help them understand, but looking at how you build on the positives. His suggestion is through appreciative inquiry, you'll start learning why things work. And you do more of the things that work. So you're not always just spending time solving problems. And I think it has a profound effect of how you look at the world and what's going on. And so appreciative inquiry is a great read, and you can Google it and you'll find a number of articles and books on it, and it works. And it's how we change our way of thinking and being both appreciative and grateful and thankful for those people that make things work.
I love the power of a good creative person, and why are things working is such a simple but great question. Why are things working? It's so great.
Yeah. And it starts looking at that, and then you say, okay, what do we do more of that? Why did that work? Sometimes he says you're going to find out it's a mystery. Sometimes it's
Mm,
just good luck that happened.
mm,
But
mm,
more often than not, it's people that are good listeners and they're good leaders, and they will make decisions and move things forward. And as we look at that, it is a great way of looking at the world with individuals with disabilities, of what are your strengths and what are you good at? What do you want to do? A young man with autism is a delightful young man named Drew. And Drew and I shared this unique haircuts that we have, which means we don't get them very often. And Drew, all the way through grade school and up into high school, had a one-on-one aide because of his autism and all the things that supposedly were wrong with him. And it wasn't till a high school principal looked at him and said, Drew, where are you going to go to college? What do you want to do after college? All the way through 8th grade, nobody had ever mentioned that because he had autism.
mm,
Drew then said, I've always wanted to work with animals.
mm.
Principal said, so then our goal is, if you keep that as your goal, I'll help you find an educational program after high school that'll train you to work with animals and see what you want to do. Drew then went on through high school, didn't need an aide. They worked with him in school, and he went to a 4-year college in New England and
Mm.
studied animal husbandry and wants to work in a zoo. He eventually wants to move to Alaska and work with animals. That's his goal. I wouldn't put it past him. And one day when I was talking to Drew about going to college and how he was doing, and he said, I finally learned that autism isn't what's wrong with me. It's just like my long brown hair. It's part of who I am. And I came to accept it instead of praying every night that it went away. And all of a sudden, that changed his whole perception in his life. It changed his parents' life. And they put him on this path that I believe he'll make it to Alaska one day if he still wants to do that, and see where that takes him along the way. So it's all about building on strengths rather than deficits.
So, something you mentioned in that brilliant story is about purpose too. Once Drew got focused on a purpose, it sounds like he was able to use his energy to achieve the purpose and discover things about himself, like he didn't need an aid to be with him all the time. How important is it for people who experience different kinds of disabilities and challenges to find their unique purpose in life?
Oh, I think it's absolutely essential for all of us, right? I mean, it's the difference between living and existing. Right? If you're living, you're following whatever that passion you have. And it may be work, it may be playing an instrument, it may be singing in the church, it may be walking dogs in your neighborhood. The idea of discovering your passions is so key. And in fact, a good friend of mine does this wonderful metaphor. She said, we've all got this invisible padlock around our neck, and we hold the key to unlock it. And sometimes we need help unlocking this padlock, of finding out this ability to dream and to say out loud what that dream is. I have sitting with three women who happened to live in a home with a lady who was their staff member, and they had developed this incredible and positive relationship with each other. And where it started off with is they were sitting around one night talking about their dreams. And the staff member said, you know, what I dream about is becoming a professional singer one day.
Mm.
And so three women that she supported, again, she supported them. They said, we think you'd be a wonderful singer. We want to come listen to you sing. And so they now, every time she goes out and sings in a little gig, and it may be a coffee shop or a bar where there's only 8 people there, these 3 ladies that she works with show up every time, and they're there cheering her on. And this idea that she was brave enough to share what her dreams are, and she turned around and became then the champion for their dreams. And one of them said, I've always wanted to sing in a church choir. She'd never told anybody that. So they began working on finding a church choir for her to sing with them. And she wasn't a particularly good singer, but she loved singing in the choir. And most choirs are glad to have people sing, no matter how good they are. And you know what? When she got around other people, she became a better singer. So this idea of how do we support one another in ways is all part of what we try to do with Quillo, to think out of the box and think about not just what is compliance with all the rules, but how do we cover those dreams and let people express them in ways that are, in their words, not what we think they should be doing.
Yeah, it's so important for each of us to take ownership of our unique dreams and not have ideas of what we should do with our lives forced upon us. I want to celebrate another part of that story. So often in society, we think of people who experience disabilities as somehow needing to be helped and doing for them, but that story really captured the reciprocal nature of relationships among people, like those 3 women, that they celebrated the dream of the person working with them, and that gave her more energy to do the things she most wants to do in life.
Absolutely. And you know, we don't talk about that enough, and the power we have and the gift we have to give encouragement or give positive messages. You know, one of the things that we do at Quillo is throughout the years, we work with folks about extending appreciation and thankfulness from people with disabilities to their families, to the folks that work with them, their teachers, the people that are there with them, to just say thank you. And to be part of that, saying, I do appreciate you. I appreciate you listening to me. I appreciate how you give me choices rather than tell me what to do. So many times, and this is one of the things that some of the research is really interesting on too, is professionals working with people with disabilities, many times 90% of their conversations with the person with the disability is telling them what to do. It's giving them directives.
90%?
90% of the time.
Oh.
And you know, how many of us would stay in a relationship with a significant other if all they told us is what to do? And
We
so
will be like, bye.
Yeah,
See you
yeah.
later.
And so, you know, it's like going to a team meeting. First of all, those aren't our teams. I didn't get to pick that team. I'm showing up. I'm talking to all these people. You know, and you know, favorite story of mine, we were helping this young man move out of one of our state hospitals in Indiana. And he was quite a clever guy, and he had done some pretty tough things over the years, and he didn't really want to move because he really controlled things within the institution. And so we started talking one day, and I went to one of his meetings, and I said to him, I said, what do you dream about you'd really love doing? And he looked at me like he was trying to decide whether he could trust me or not. Was I just another one of these suits in the meeting? Somebody there paid to be in the meeting to control his life, tell him what he's going to do. And he said, I would like to have a job as being a waiter in a bar. I said, okay, what appeals to you about being a waiter in the bar? And he said, well, I think I'd like to drink beer. And I said, well, I like drinking beer too, but you can't drink beer when you're on the job. So, and he said, I get that. And I think he was kind of testing me a little bit. And I told him a story about a young woman with cerebral palsy who had a power wheelchair in Terre Haute, Indiana, and she got a job working in a bar. And they crafted a special tray for a power wheelchair that held the drinks. She made more tips in a night than any other waiter or waitress in the bar. And they found her an apartment that was accessible, that she didn't have to take public transportation and get back and forth to work. And I told him that story, and he said, I would love to do that. So we came back the next meeting, and the rest of the team was, of course, just flabbergasted and why are you in?
Do you encounter some resistance sometimes?
Yes.
John?
He said, why we can't support him finding a job in a bar. And I said, this is the first time you've ever listened to him, isn't it? And how's it going for you telling him what he can and can't do? Having a job at a bar, you can make some good money, and not what everybody wants, and he found his path that way. I began looking at it. He eventually decided it wasn't as much fun as he thought it was, but he's still working out in the community, loves it, have his own place. And it took somebody listening to him along the way to do that.
Somebody listening and allowing his words to have an impact and actually change something. And
Absolutely. We had another guy that had a brilliant job coach, and young man who happened to have autism, and he wanted to be a railroad engineer. Well, it's a very hard job to get for anybody. And, there aren't that many of them, and they're very responsible jobs. And so his odds of getting one were pretty long. Well, instead of the job coach saying to him, you can't ever do that, she said, well, the first thing every railroad engineer has to have is a hat. Their little railroad engineer hats, they're gray and white stripes, and it's kind of a traditional marker for people that work on the railroad. So she got him a railroad engineer's hat. And she said, while we're looking at researching the idea of being an engineer, there's a toy store in town here, a hobby shop, and they sell model trains. Maybe we should go talk to those guys because they love trains too, like you love trains. So next thing you know, one led to another, and he got a job in the hobby shop, helping take care of the store and eventually help sell the model trains. The owner of the store introduced him to a group of people that have these huge basement setups of these model trains. And next thing you know, he's got a group of friends that are all into model trains. He never made it to be a railroad engineer on a full-size train, but he now had a group of friends. He had a job, excuse me, and he managed to turn that passion because somebody didn't just say no, but tried to find him a way to build that passion along them.
This reminds me, I just thought of this, I took improv for a few years, and they have a concept in improv called yes and that means when someone says something like act like a carpenter now, the other person goes yes and starts hammering instead of saying, I don't want to be a carpenter, I want to be a rocket scientist. And so when he told that lady, I want to be a locomotive engineer, she didn't go, no, think of something else. She went, yes, and engineers need a hat. And then the story just keeps going with people saying yes and yes and yes and pretty soon his name's John too.
Yeah.
What was his pretty soon that guy is experiencing a whole new life
Yep.
because people just keep going yeah yes and
And another way to look at that is another importance of a word is sometimes people will get down on themselves and say, I can't do this, or I can't learn this, or I can't do this. And a powerful word is the word yet. So one of our authors does a video on the power of the word yet. If you just change that phrase and put the word yet at the end of this, I can't do this yet. I can't learn this yet. It opens the door that instead of saying I can't, it's I can't do it yet. So I'm going to keep trying to get it and get better at it. This is where this power of positive psychology comes in and begin looking at. We look at people and find out what do they love doing and how do we help them do more of that? And how do we stop doing things that they hate? And that is one of our great lessons for folks as we begin thinking about, instead of fixing people all the time. I often dealt with case managers and professionals and do training, and I'll sometimes pick somebody out of the crowd, just some willing volunteer, and ask them to stand up in front of 50, 100, 250 people. And I ask everybody in the room to look at this person for 60 seconds and think about everything that's wrong with them. They don't know them, but they're just standing up there and making decisions based upon how they look. Now, I usually stop it because usually there's some snickering and chuckling, and because it's awkward and it's uncomfortable. But for decades, that's what we've done with people with disabilities. We've looked at them and said everything that's wrong with them and how we're going to fix it. So I'll stop it after about 30 seconds because it's very uncomfortable. And then I'll say, now, what did you learn by doing that? You immediately jump to their appearance, what you can read into it, what they should be doing. Now let's look at this person again, and for 60 seconds, think about everything that's wonderful about him. Now take that back, and as you think about people you work with, your colleagues, how do we think about the things that they're wonderful at? I was leading a small discussion group with a group of parents at a table, and one mother brought her daughter with her who had a disability. And about 5 minutes into my presentation, her daughter jumped up and went around the room and said, "Hi, Jason, my name's Cheryl. What's your name?" And then went around the room and sat down. About 10 minutes later, she popped up again and said, "Hi, Jason, my name's Cheryl. What's your name?" And just went around the room again. About 10 minutes later, she's getting ready to do it, and her mother's going to get up and leave. And I said, "Why are you leaving?" And she said, "I'm so embarrassed. My daughter just can't help herself." And I said, "I think she has the most beautiful smile. And if I can teach her 3 words, I can get her a job tomorrow." She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "She has a gift. When she says, 'Hi, John, my name's Cheryl. What's yours?' I want to tell her, even though I've told her 3 times, because she's smiling. She's so happy to see me." I said, if I can teach her, "Welcome to," and add the name of the store, "My name's Cheryl. Glad to have you." Everybody would be glad to come into that store. I said, "She has a gift." The mother looked at me and she said, "In 47 years, no one has ever said my daughter has a gift."
Mm.
Now, think about that for a moment. What we've lost as a society because we didn't let this Cheryl experience her gift. She'd be a wonderful greeter at church. She would be a wonderful greeter anywhere, visiting people in the hospital. There's all kinds of things that could turn that gift into making a life better for folks. So, sharing with her mother a story about a career and how it could start as a volunteer and lead to something. Everybody's got gifts. How do we, and we believe at Quillo that by telling stories, we help other people unlock those padlocks and help people find their gifts and make their contributions along the way.
If sometimes it's the person who has the disability who gets most down on themselves. What if I came to you and said, John, I have this disability, the thing wrong with me, the thing wrong with me is it's all just too much. I'm way behind the curve. I'll never catch up. What would you say to me to help me change that perspective, or would you just agree with me and go, yeah?
Well, the first thing
That's
I learned from friends of mine who are professionals and psychologists, and I am not. I went to college to play football. So first, this is
Dude.
what I've learned from other people. The first thing I'd say is that has to feel really tough, Jason. That has to feel really tough. And the fact that you shared it with me is incredibly powerful.
Mm.
And so thank you for sharing that. And just by the fact you've shared it shows me you've got the power to overcome it. So, yes, on this side of the equation, you've got these things working against you. You said to me one time when we were recording, and you did a thing about your voice, and you said, well, it's the only one I've got. And you could be agonizing over your voice and not wanting to speak out in public because of your speech and worry about that, or you turned it into a strength because you get people to listen to you. So that's a strength. So I would say to that person, let's talk about all the positive things you've got in your life and what is it you've got going for you that you're here doing this. I remember I was talking with a good friend of mine who happens to sadly be no longer with us. She passed away, but she was an African-American woman with cerebral palsy. And she was sitting, we were talking, and she actually, Betty Williams is her name, and she did a video for us on this for Quillo. And she said, sometimes people come to me and say, one, you're a woman.
Mm.
So you're discriminated against by being a woman. Secondly, you're a Black woman. And then thirdly, you're a Black woman with a disability. So one person actually came up to her professional and said, you got 3 strikes against you before you can get up to bat.
What an awful thing to tell someone.
Terrible. Why say that to someone? And instead, Betty said, I don't look at it that way. I look at the wonderful Black women who have helped lead and shape this country in the civil rights movement. And I want to do the same thing in the disability movement. And she went on to become the president, the international president of Self-Advocates Becoming Empowered. And she got to meet the president. She got to travel to Japan and speak to people with disabilities, things that I've never got to do. And she found that instead of using that as things working against her, how does she continue to move forward along the way in her life? And so to that person, I would keep trying to find ways of, again, using some of Seligman's work about how do we be grateful for what we have? One of the things he says, one of the great text tools you can do is every night before you go to bed, just find 3 things you're grateful for. If you've got a bed to sleep in, be thankful for the bed. Don't wish for a better bed. Just be thankful you got a bed. If the roof isn't leaking, or you can move your bed out from under where the roof is leaking, be thankful for that. So the idea of begin looking at that. The second thing is begin thinking about small progress you make. We don't move big mountains in one day, but we can move 3 rocks. What are 3 rocks that you moved today that led you on your path? You once told me you want to reach 1 million people. I have no doubt you're going to reach that goal, that you're going to speak to 1 million people, because you're not giving up. And every day you're adding more to that numbers of folks. And people are going to tell folks, did you hear this guy, Jason Freeman, on his podcast, or when he came to our school, or he spoke to our assembly, or he spoke to our business or our Rotary Club? You're spreading that positive message all the time. And I just am so impressed by what you get done every day. And that's one of the things I'm thankful for.
Thank you for that. That feels good to hear. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome.
And speaking of stories, and you said it and you went on to say other things. You went to college to play football.
Yes, I grew up.
You went to college to play football.
Yeah. So I grew up in Sisseton, little town up on the Sisseton, Wahpeton, Oyate, and on the reservation. And I'm not native, so grew up there. My dad ended up settling there, and was fortunate to have both a football coach and a wrestling coach that encouraged me to pursue some things in school. And I went from being just a kid where school was the academic part was fine and easier for me, but the social part was really difficult. And so getting involved in sports gave me another path to feel comfortable, because I'm a big guy. I'm about 6'5", always been a big guy. Not a particular fast runner, or basketball wasn't a sport for me. So football and wrestling were really great opportunities for me, and got me a scholarship to go to Huron College in South Dakota, a little small school, liberal arts school that's not there anymore. But little decisions. That's where I met my wife of 33 years, and that's where I got introduced to the Arc. One of my football coaches was one of the first special ed professors in the state of South Dakota in education. And he asked me one day if I'd found a teaching job. And I said, no. And he said, why don't you go talk to these people in the Arc? And they need somebody. They don't have much money, but they want somebody working with young people. And that was 1973. And that's what got me into the Arc. So playing football got me to Huron, who got me to meet Coach Wallman. And that led me to a career in the Arc. And also where I met my wife and had our family together. So
in a way, playing football is the reason why Quillo exists and is impacting people in 15 states.
Yeah, that's probably true. And one thing football does teach you, other than my joints hurt every morning now, but is somebody said to me one time in my lobbying with the Arc, and it's probably true with Quillo, is they just said, gee, you never give up. And so every play is a new chance to make a difference, and every day is a chance to make a difference. Maya Angelou is one of my favorite poets, and she has this great line about embrace today. It's unlike any day that you've ever had before, and it's brand new. To make it of what you will. And I think that's so true. And that's true for people with disabilities. That same story you said of somebody that's struggling today can be different. And this is Pride Month, and as we talk about the struggles of young men and women dealing with their own gender identity and the bullying and the torture that goes on in schools, we would be remiss without talking about the damage that is done to people with disabilities is also done to others, whether it's racial or gender identity. And of course, these coexist in people. So if you're Black or brown and you have a disability and you also may be gay, life can be incredibly hard unless you have friends and allies that love you and accept you for who you are, not how you look along the way. And so I appreciate you creating a safe space to talk about things, Jason, that not everybody does in these times that are so challenging for people. And your message is so important to keep getting out there for individuals. And I look forward when you can say you have 1 million followers and you've reached that 1 million mark along the way.
Thanks so much, John. On the subject, where oftentimes as humans, it seems like there's so many places of need and so many, it can be overwhelming. But what are a few small things we can do as people when we come in contact with someone who experiences a disability, or someone who has a different gender orientation, or someone of a different ethnicity than us. What are a few small things we can do to build togetherness rather than the opposite?
That's a great question. We're actually launching a campaign that started yesterday. Do you know that May 31st was the National Day to Smile?
No, that's awesome.
Yes. So we're launching a campaign this summer called the Summer of Smiles. That there is so much divisiveness in the world. There's so much anger along the way that one small thing that we do that costs nothing, smiling at people costs you nothing. Being kind to people, and a smile says, I'm glad to see you, says, I'm glad you're here. I acknowledge you. I want to validate you as being here in this space, in this moment with me. And, there's a reason, in the old days of telemarketers on the phone, they used to put a mirror up in front of their telephone so they could see themselves and see if they were smiling while they talked on the phone.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. This summer, we're wanting to ask people to find reasons to smile every day. And smile.
This is a Quillo campaign?
Yes, this is all part of Quillo's Summer of Smiles. And people can learn more about it on our website. It's myquillow.com, myquillo.com. But the Summer of Smiles is all about the power we have to influence others. That simple thing is walking or rolling down the street and smiling at somebody you'll never talk to. You'll never talk to them. Gives them a feeling of, this is a friendly person. If you're smiling to people that you work with, that you're around, that you live with, that you make this effort. The research is clear. Smiling releases endorphins. You feel better when you smile. The research is also clear is even a smile that's forced makes something like getting a shot feel better than not smiling. So we want to, for 3 months, challenge people to find ways to smile and begin thinking about what impact they have on others. Too often we forget about the fact that just by being nice to people, by being smiling at them and being positive, we may be helping people that in ways we never thought of. I'm sure you've had it happen to you, Jason. I have. People have come up to me years later and said, you don't know how important it was hearing you speak one day, because I was at a really tough time. They didn't come up and talk to me after the session, but they ran into me later and said, that really made a difference to me. So something everybody can do is smile, be kind to those around them, and be appreciative.
This gets into two things. I love the simplicity of your suggestions. They won't take us hours on end. They're just simple. Just smile and be appreciative, and it's beautiful. The other thing is the concept of we have ripple effect in life, and often we don't see how far or I would say probably almost never do we get to see how far that ripple goes out. It goes out beyond our awareness. Can you say
Absolutely.
anything about that?
Well, ripple is a great analogy for folks because, it is one small pebble in the pond and the ripples just roll out and they run to others. And so some act of kindness or some simple act of smiling and being friendly to someone, and that touches three more people and touches three more and touches three more as it moves out, and it moves out exponentially. So you never know where that ends. It isn't just one person. And, it's the old saying that to the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you may be the world. And that's that moment that you don't get to pick when it is. And just by being some randomly nice to someone, that may be something that helps them get through a tough moment that you don't even know about because they're just someone you come in contact with. One of the things that we encourage professionals who are working with people with disabilities is to, again, what are the positive things you can say to them about how they look, how they're doing, how they're, making a difference. I had a young friend, Brian, who would do this every day, and he'd hit himself, and they would strap that arm down, and then he would hit himself with the other one. And when they strapped that arm down, and I said, have you ever talked to him about why he's hitting himself? And, so we sat down and talked, and Brian didn't hit himself when I was talking to him. And he was difficult to understand because he didn't communicate in the normal ways. Turns out he was bored. He was just bored to death. And when I sat and smiled with him and laughed with him, and he started laughing, and they said, well, we've never seen him laugh before. And I said, well, I'm kind of funny to look at. So maybe that's why he's laughing. I don't know. But he quit hitting himself when we were doing this. And I said, what did we learn from that? Let's find things he wants to do. Let's go outside. Let's do stuff. And they said, well, nobody's written that up in his plan. We don't know what to do. And, there's the other thing that we can be better at. It's just being human beings and caring and being kind to one another. And, it's just as we're running out of time here, I'll just share one last story. I was down in Florida this last week, and I took an Uber ride back to the airport. And my driver has probably 180 degrees different political views than I do, and very, very outspoken in his views. And, I said to him, and I don't mean to, I won't say which side is, people probably can look at me and probably guess, but my whole point is, he would make these really intense statements. And I said, you could be right. I don't agree with you, but you could be right. Now, it also could be that I'm right. Or maybe right isn't the right term, but maybe we meet in the middle and we try to agree on things. And he laughed and he said, well, you're not like most people I meet of your persuasion. And I said, well, I won't get very far arguing with you, but I learn more listening than I do talking. And when we got out of the 20-minute car ride, I don't think I convinced him of anything else other than, and again, I'm a liberal. I said, maybe you've agreed that somebody who is as liberal as I am still loves his country, and we can all do better together.
Mm,
And what I think, I only end that story with, as we think about people with disabilities and their gifts and their challenges, that we have a lot of people that we have to work with, professionals, family members, all may feel they're right also. How do we listen to them, but also then help them listen to the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of their sons and daughters and their loved ones, and what we can build. And that, again, that sharing today and shaping tomorrow is all about finding that passion. And you, my friend, have found yours, and you're very good at it. And I know you're going to reach that 1 million mark here sooner rather than later.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I would just one last question I ask all my guests. So I talk about the power of doing our imperfect best, and to me it means we get a vision of what the best means to each of us, and we follow that. But when mistakes and challenges come up, we learn from those challenges and keep moving towards the best rather than using those mistakes and challenges as a reason to stop. What does doing your imperfect best mean to you, John Dickerson?
Well, I think your phrase is brilliant. I really use that term rarely, but it's brilliant because we're all imperfect, and we're all can only do our best at this moment. And the best decision we can make today may be different than one we'd make 2 years from now, because we've learned something along the way. So when I first heard you say that, I thought, this is amazing. We've got to get this guy in front of other folks, because doing your imperfect best is what changes the world. There's a saying from Edmund Burke, the famous English writer, and he said, a great sadness is seeing great things that need to be done and doing nothing because you can only do small things. Small things add up to great things. So your imperfect best may not change the world all in one fell swoop, but if everybody does their best, we will change the world.
Well, thanks for all you're doing, for the inspiration you've given during this hour to be wholly ourselves, and to be kind and trust the power of our stories. Thank you, my friend.
Well, very humbled to be here. So thank you, Jason, and look forward to your next one.
Cool. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Take care.
Take care. Oh my gosh, I love this part of my week. Oh, on people fascinating. And have so much wisdom. Like John has so much healing wisdom, and he engages so many other people and helps them see the power of their stories and their brilliance. So great. Thanks for tuning in. Next week, who is it? Oh, who is that guy? The non-Dakota accent guy. What is that? Some kind of joke? Oh, next week I'll be interviewed by my partner and my business, the amazing, the creative, the brilliant Chris Taylor, and we'll be talking about well, you'll have to tune in next week, because I don't know how to encapsulate it right now. Anyway, tune in next week, and thanks for your time tuning in today. Remember, you are important. Your story is important. You are the best. Bye.